As you all know by now, the Palace of Shadow is not exactly a pleasant time. For other partners, it's understandable because they are completely foreign to the Palace of Shadow and they of course would not know anything about it. But Vivian being a shadow makes me wonder just how little does she actually know about this place. And given that, just how much could she really struggle? Turns out, a lot. There really is nothing to say about the dry bones and dark bones that you find midway through the first section of the Palace of Shadow, but that's because Vivian's just naturally very gifted in fighting bones. Like, her fiery jinx does not waste any time at all here. She just burns the bones up and we just keep moving forward, which is kind of weird because you think that bones wouldn't be weak to fire since that's the case in literally every other Mario game, excluding, well, Paper Mario. In Paper Mario, they're weak to fire. So yeah, it doesn't take very long to get through and we just move on to the next boss, which is, oh boy. Actually, a lot of what I said in my Coops Only challenge applies to this fight with Vivian too. The only real difference is that your max HP is worse for manipulating peril, and you lack a defense point. This makes for an awkward encounter because you're going to need to reach peril for this fight to be manageable without hemorrhaging whack-a-bumps. Getting past the defense deficit and uncomfortable HP max though, and Vivian has an arguably easier time in Coops. At least if you're not stubborn like I am, and let me tell you, I'm a freaking halfwit sometimes. And I just sometimes insist on not leveling up at all because, well, what I was trying to do had an inhuman amount of luck involved, and it was costing me dearly both in time and insanity. Getting some extra BP for Mario to have at least 30 HP via HP pluses would guarantee that one Poison Breath, Earthquake, and Mega Breath, if you guarded them all, would do only 28 damage, which is much better than having only 25 HP and having to pray that Gloomtail did not use his Poison Breath to have a chance to survive, since I can always heal later. But that's the power of retrospect. It makes me feel like an idiot even when I'm thinking logically because it's just too late to try and play proper. Makes me really wish there was a way to rebattle bosses like in Bug Fables. Back to how Vivian and Coops compare to each other though, Vivian has a notable immunity to Earthquake, so you only have to account for the attacks to deal 8 damage and plan around those, which makes damage manipulation a lot easier over the course of the fight. She also has an attack that hits for 5 damage that also burns, which is really about as strong as Coops' Shell Slam, but arguably better because if you drop Gloomtail's HP to a value that's 1 point above the damage trigger, and then the burn carries over the next turn, he will attack you with that move you just triggered his next attacking turn no matter what you do. So really, you're one step ahead of him, and by 32 HP, he'll have just quaked. By 16, he only will have started charging his Mega Breath, and when his HP drops to 1, he may launch a 16 damage Blight Bomb against our beloved Shadow Siren, but the Emulous Wheel of the Call won't be for me because the burn we casted prior will finish him off. You could argue, and you wouldn't be wrong to say it, I could have just brought some life shrooms for this fight, but I don't really think so. Because if partners need to keep Mario alive to avoid a game over, but partners can faint with the battle continuing, I don't think I really should care if the game doesn't, and it's not like Mario did anything anyway. Besides, I spent almost 2 hours trying to beat this fight on stream, and it was driving me insane, so yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm spent. And as you'll see later in the video, it really was a bad idea to not grind earlier because I will promise you, the Shadow Queen will put us through heck and back. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but it genuinely took me roughly 2 hours to get past this one fight because I did not want to grind for more BP, for more HP, or to get like a Defend plus P equipped for Vivian, so that I would actually take the same amount of damage from both the Poisonous Breath and the Stomp and Bite, while also having another badge like, say, P update on P equipped. Like, a few minutes spent grinding could have made this so much easier, and I needed to grind later on anyway, so it really would have just saved me a lot of time in the long run. I wish I had done it earlier because, my god, this was driving me crazy. But it went from feeling obnoxious to just downright rude when I had like an attempt fail because I missed because of fog. I can't express enough how much I hate when stuff like this happens. And it makes me wish that fog just did not exist in the game, but it's just a part of the game and it's something we have to deal with. And you can argue in favor of having like fog and other stage hazards, but as an autistic male, let me just tell you that having a lack of consistency when it comes to how this game works frustrates me to no freaking end, and I wish I could get rid of it, but I just can't, so oh well. Less dragging on, more family reunion. Naturally, like anyone else that just spent, say, 2 hours trying to beat one boss that they could have just grinded a little bit for to beat faster, I went on trying to beat the Shadow Sirens in a speedrun sense, and I ended up getting pushed back a bit too. I tried to brute force this battle, and it became apparent after just seeing Marilyn bully me with lightning spam that it was just not going to work. Vivian just does not have the bulk to survive for very long, even if she does at least have better damage output than anyone else really has before, like, say, cheesing this fight with Peril. It really just boils down to the fact that you take damage too quickly to survive. So getting some healing items would be absolutely advised, and I'm saying absolutely again just because I feel like it just adds a lot more punch to my commentary. Because Vivian definitely won't be doing any punching in this fight. You can smell the pungent aroma. Now I'm going to stop before someone tries to punch me out. But I went to get some items because I really needed the items to stay alive. I just did not have the HP or defense. And it did help my survivability quite a bit. I did end up losing Syl a few times because I got double teamed a lot. Which is to say, sometimes Belladon will make one of her own sirens get faster and they'll just keep attacking Vivian. And even though I just heal, I don't have the HP to survive because that just does way too much damage way too fast. Like, this fight demands that I both heal because I cannot survive it very long, but it also demands I finish it quickly because if Zelda makes something fast, which she will do turn 3, and there's just a chance I can get completely blown back if I don't finish the fight fast enough. And I can only finish the fight so fast because Vivian is just not capable of dealing enough damage otherwise. And getting into Peril isn't reliable at all with how erratic their AI is. This fight is doable, but it was very annoying. And I hate to have to say it, but it ain't gonna get any easier from this point forward. That being said, Grodus was actually pretty fun. You know, if TTYD was made by EA. I say this because this fight was very expensive on my FP. If ever a turn goes by I don't use an item that hits literally every enemy on screen, or I use Fiery Jinx, Grodus will become invincible again, and I have to waste another turn just to make him vulnerable. Vivian does have an attack that allows her to knock them all out, but it costs 6 FP, and that's not exactly the most cost-effective thing to spam. Even with Flower Saver Ps, it's just really expensive, and that can make this really drag on. Definitely one of the fights where Double Dip P really shines, because it allows me to get my stats up too, as I'm also keeping his defenses down. Of course, I wish all we had to worry about was just dealing damage to Grodus, but we also have to keep ourselves and Mario alive. An order that is pretty dang tricky to juggle too when we just don't have that much bulk, which I've said again because it's just that big of a problem. Bringing a life stream for this fight is actually not a bad idea, because it allows you to keep up the assault even after you die. And very often, you don't really need more than 10 extra HP to survive for longer. And it allows me a lot more leniency in just choosing who I want to heal whenever I absolutely have to heal. So while this fight also forced us to act fast, it also ended in a flash. It's to that extent, I am really freaking thankful. I even got lucky with how many times that Grodus decided just to spam his stop attack, so I did not even have to use my life stream in this fight. It's a shame though that freaking Bowser and Kammy Koopa could not let us have a Hollywood happy ending like it was in a freaking Disney fairy tale. Fiery Jinx spam here was mandatory. If it was any way I wanted to get myself to make any actual progress in this fight without having to also worry about Mario taking too much damage. As always, Volt Streams are excellent for keeping Bowser's AI locked, and I was wholly ready, just waiting for Kammy Koopa to eventually die as she repeatedly healed Bowser and I chipped her down with my Fiery Jinx spam. But that didn't happen. No, for some strange reason, Kammy Koopa was just dead set on healing herself. I think she healed Bowser like one time and that's literally it. And get this, I actually killed Bowser before I managed to kill Kammy. Just think about that. Kammy Koopa has only 50 HP maximum. Bowser has 70. Even with the extra point or two of chip damage from having my electrified status, how did I actually manage to beat Bowser before her? She must have healed him like only once and that was it. Like, I know it felt like it took a long time, but my god. That aside though, it also meant that the fight may have actually taken less time. It just felt longer because Bowser does a lot more damage. Kammy can make the fight last a lot longer, sure, because of her ability to heal, but really that's all she really was able to add, just making it last longer. I'm still not quite sure how to process exactly just how this managed to happen. She probably healed herself like half a dozen times in this fight. But hey, I can't complain too much. Especially not now. We have a final boss to challenge. And a final boss she is. So what's a good way to illustrate just how much trouble this fight was giving me? I'd say it's something akin to fighting your own mother. Except replace the moral compass with this just being one of the absolute most brutal final boss fights I've ever had to deal with only using a single partner. This fight was agony. So Vivian's attack power is already below average at best. Even with having some power plus P equipped, she just doesn't hit very hard. It's a similar weakness to Coop's, except that Coop's was at least able to get away with it somewhat because his Shell Slam is capable of one-shotting basically any kind of assistance that the Shadow Queen can summon, at least without having to use P up, D down, P. That is a luxury that Vivian cannot afford, and she is very frequently put into critical HP ranges. And critical does not necessarily mean you are at an HP range where you can trigger peril easy. It's actually very difficult to get Vivian in peril without the use of something like Point Swap. And you wouldn't want to use a Point Swap here anyway, because Point Swap is only really worth it if you have such, catastrophic damage potential that it actually can override just how much you would lose out on longevity. And Vivian suffers from the worst of both worlds. She doesn't do enough damage to really justify using a Point Swap, but she's also too frail even if you did not have one. While in peril, the fullest extent of damage she can deal is only 15 plus a burn. That's 10% of the Shadow Queen's max HP. Compare it to Goombella, who can do maybe around a third, or maybe Yoshi, who can do about a fifth. That's pitiful. And unlike Flurry, she has a very hard time keeping herself alive. It's actually very common that the left and right hands will drain your HP at a very alarming rate. Even if she can't heal faster than you can hurt her, you cannot hope for the life of you to survive the onslaught of what she can throw at you. You just can't. By passing up P up, D down, P, you have no way of one-shotting the dead hands that the Shadow Queen sometimes will spawn. And when you're taking damage from both the Shadow Queen herself and her dead hands, the damage adds up extremely quickly. You're probably thinking to back up some Ultra Shrooms for this fight, but do not be misled. Ultra Shrooms will not keep you alive for very long. Almost as soon as you use one, it's basically already exhausted. A problem you'll have regardless if you're using P up, D down, P or not. With P up, D down, P, you're doing more damage over the course of the fight, but you'll have about a snowball's chance in hell to actually get yourself into peril after a life stream is exhausted. And trust me, you will bleed life shrooms in this fight. It lasts so long and Vivian just has so few options to really fight with that I did not know what to do. You're probably wondering about the Mega Wave, and let's talk about that too. When the Shadow Queen charges her Mega Wave, you can in fact Veil to dodge it, but she can attack multiple times in a single turn. And nothing is stopping her from using Mega Wave in a consecutive turn right after she did use it. Yeah, when I said that Veil would only be good for Atomic Boot, I was not kidding. It is actually a liability in this fight. For the longest time, I didn't know what to do. This was actually eating at my mind because I felt like this is abominable. I may be stubborn to grind, but I have to grind here. If only so that Mario would not use live streams as often because Vivian's gonna burn right through them like they're nothing anyway. It didn't help that I was not getting any help from the mushroom bingos because there were just none coming up. So I went to level up. A lot. And I have to say, I really wish I had done this earlier because I thought that I could have done Gloomtail without having to level up more. And it absolutely would have made that fight easier, but hindsight is 2020. I do not want to level up more than I have to, and if not only for my own sanity, it's also for the partner rankings. Which, if for some reason you are not aware what they are, then actually watch the video to the very end and you'll find out. There were several attempts, some closer than others. Few were very close and still ended in a bitter, painful defeat. But I was persistent. Eventually, after many attempts at this one fight, victory would be all but inevitable. The stars aligned. We saw bingos we absolutely needed. We managed to fall into peril just off of damage we were taking from the Shadow Queen off of pure dumb luck. And with one final wave of my magic finger, we smoked the Shadow Queen for the witch she is. And that's all she wrote. This run was nothing short of pain. I'm sorry if you're a fan of Vivian, but I have to come out and say it, she is not a very good partner. I mean, according to the rankings, I do think that she will at least be better than Koops, but I think Koops did a much better job at actually supporting Mario. Vivian may be ahead of Koops right now, but that is subject to change, because I'm wondering just how exactly all the partners would do if in theory they had to play the entire game from start to finish, which would also include stuff like the Glitz Pit, which caused a lot of issues for partners before Flurry. But we did find the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just glad it didn't lead to the pearly gates of heaven. But even more than that, I am pumped for the next partner coming up in this series. That partner will be Yoshi, who despite being just a newborn, is an almighty beacon of devastation and domination. As always, I won't tell you to subscribe, but be my guest if you want to. The next partner-only challenge will be an absolute doozy. Until then, do this. Click and watch the video on the screen right now, and see how a real girl can take this game. I'll see you next time, and as always, thank you for watching.